My name is Marcus. I'm 24 years old, and I work the graveyard shift at Riverside Storage facility in Portland, Oregon. It's one of those massive self-storage complexes on the edge of the city, hundreds of units, 3 floors, and endless hallways that all look exactly the same. I took this job 6 months ago after dropping out of community college, mostly because it paid better than anything else I could find without a degree. The work itself is mind-numbingly boring. Walking the same routes, checking the same locks, staring at the same security monitors for 8 hours straight. Most nights, absolutely nothing happens. The building is silent, except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the occasional creak of metal doors, expanding and contracting with the temperature changes. I work alone from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 nights a week. And honestly, I'd gotten comfortable with the solitude. I'd bring my laptop, stream shows during the quiet hours, and basically get paid to exist in an empty building. But that all changed 3 weeks ago, and I still can't shake what happened. I've thought about quitting every single day since, but something keeps me coming back. Maybe it's the need to understand what I experienced, or maybe I'm just too stubborn to let fear win. Either way, I figured it was time to share this story before it drives me completely insane. Started on a Tuesday night, typically the quietest and deadest night of the week. I was doing my usual 1 a.m. perimeter check when the phone rang on the facility's main line. That was strange, because nobody ever calls that late. Any after-hours emergencies are supposed to go through the company's answering service. Picked up, and this woman's voice came through, shaky, soft, and desperate. She said her name was Chen, and that she just rented Unit 237 earlier that afternoon. She told me she'd left something extremely important in there and needed to retrieve it right away. I told her tenants aren't allowed access after 10 p.m., not without prior authorization. But she kept insisting it was an emergency, something about legal documents she needed for court the next morning. She sounded genuinely distressed, on the verge of tears, and I felt bad for her. Against my better judgment, and definitely against company policy, I told her I'd meet her at the front entrance in 10 minutes. I figured I'd just let her grab whatever she needed, get her out, and be done with it. What could go wrong, right? I grabbed my keys and headed to the lobby. Through the glass doors, I saw a silver Honda Civic pulling into the parking lot. A woman in her 30s stepped out. Business casual clothes, hair slightly messy, the look of someone who'd had a long, stressful day. She seemed normal enough. Tired eyes, a large purse in her hand, moving with that hurried, restless energy that matched her story. I opened the door and checked her ID against our rental database. Chen, Unit 237, rented earlier that same day at 3:47 p.m. Everything checked out perfectly. I led Rebecca through the main corridor toward the elevators, making small talk to ease the awkward tension. She mentioned she was a lawyer going through a difficult divorce. It explained why she seemed so stressed. Unit 237 was on the second floor, in the back section of the building, one of the older areas that hadn't been renovated yet. The elevator ride was silent, except for the mechanical whir of the cables and that strange hollow music that plays in every elevator, everywhere. When the doors opened on the second floor, I noticed it immediately. The temperature. It was colder up here. Not unusual, since the heating system's always been temperamental. But tonight, it felt different, almost unnaturally cold, like walking into a meat locker. Our footsteps echoed down the corridor, each one bouncing off the concrete walls. As we walked, the fluorescent lights flickered now and then, in that way that always feels ominous in movies. But in real life, you don't really notice until you do. Rebecca stayed close behind me, her heels clicking softly on the concrete floor, a steady rhythm in the quiet. We passed dozens of identical orange metal doors, each with a number stenciled in white paint. 209, 215, 221, 227. As we got closer to 237, I realized Rebecca had stopped talking. I glanced back and saw her face had gone pale. Her eyes fixed straight ahead, expression blank, unreadable. When we finally reached Unit 237, I pulled out my master key and started to unlock the rolling door. But before I could turn it, Rebecca suddenly grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. Her hand was ice cold. Rebecca's grip on my wrist tightened as she whispered, "Wait." Her voice had changed. It wasn't the same desperate, pleading tone from the phone call. It was flat, almost emotionless. "Before you open it," she said quietly, "I need to tell you something. I didn't leave documents in there." My stomach dropped. I tried to pull my hand away, but she held on, her eyes locked on mine, with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Then what did you leave?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she slowly released my wrist and took a step back. "I didn't rent this unit, Marcus. Someone else did. Someone who's been watching you." The way she said my name, that strange, eerie familiarity, made every hair on my body stand up. I never told her my name. It wasn't on my uniform, and I definitely hadn't introduced myself. "How do you know my name?" I demanded, my hand moving toward the pepper spray on my belt. Rebecca's expression didn't change. "I know a lot about you," she said, her tone calm, steady, unsettling. "I know you work alone, Tuesday through Saturday. I know you take your breaks in the office on the first floor. I know you park in spot 7 every night." She paused, her voice growing quieter. "I know about your sister in Seattle, about your ex-girlfriend, Emma, and the debt you're hiding from your parents." My blood ran cold. This wasn't possible. That wasn't public information. It wasn't anywhere online. "Who are you?" I asked, stepping back slowly. She tilted her head slightly and smiled. A thin, unsettling smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Open the unit, Marcus," she whispered. "You need to see what's inside." Every instinct screamed at me to run, to get back to the office, to call the police. But something, curiosity, shock, or maybe just pure disbelief, kept me there, standing still in front of Unit 237. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the rolling door. The metal screeched as I lifted it, the sound echoing through the empty corridor like a scream. The unit was small, maybe 10 feet deep, and completely dark inside. I pulled out my flashlight and aimed it into the blackness, and what I saw made my breath catch in my throat. The unit wasn't empty. The walls were covered, and I mean every single inch, with photographs, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all of them of me. Photos of me walking to my car, photos of me at the grocery store, photos of me sleeping in my apartment, taken through my bedroom window. There were even photos from years ago, from places I'd long forgotten about. And it wasn't just pictures. There were printed emails, bank statements, medical records, copies of text messages I'd sent to friends. In the center of the unit stood a folding table. On it, a laptop, several notebooks filled with handwritten entries about my daily routines, and on the wall above it, corkboard, a timeline of my entire life, mapped out with red string, connecting every event, every person, notes about my habits, my fears, the names of everyone I'd ever been close to. It was like walking into the mind of someone who'd made me, their entire existence. My stomach turned. I thought I was going to throw up. This wasn't days or weeks. This was years. Years of surveillance. Someone had been watching me, documenting me, studying me like I was a specimen. I turned to look at Rebecca, but she was gone, just vanished. The corridor was empty, in both directions. "Rebecca," I called out, my voice cracking. No response, only the low hum of the lights and the pounding of my heart. I pulled out my phone to call 911. But before I could dial, I heard something, a sound from inside the unit, a soft rustling, like papers being shuffled. My flashlight trembled in my hand as I swept the beam across the space again. And that's when I saw it. In the back corner, hidden behind a stack of boxes, was another person. I froze completely, my flashlight beam locked on the figure. It was a man, crouched in the corner, his back pressed against the wall. He was wearing dark clothes and had been completely still, which is why I hadn't noticed him at first. Slowly, he turned his head toward me, and in the harsh flashlight beam, I could see his face clearly. He looked to be in his 40s, hollow cheeks, sunken eyes, and an expression that was completely blank. Not angry, not scared, just empty. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity, but it was probably only a few seconds. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "You weren't supposed to come tonight." I stumbled backward out of the unit, nearly tripping over my own feet. "Stay away from me," I shouted, fumbling for my pepper spray. But the man didn't move. He just sat there in the corner, watching me with those dead eyes. "Marcus," he said. Hearing my name from his mouth made my skin crawl. "I've been waiting so long to meet you. Do you know how much work this took? How many hours I've spent learning everything about you?" His tone was casual, almost friendly, like we were old friends catching up. I finally got my phone out and started dialing 911, my hands shaking so badly I could barely press the numbers. The man saw this and suddenly stood up. He was tall, well over 6 feet, and in the confined space of the storage unit, he looked massive. "If you call them Marcus, I'll have to tell them about what you did, about Emma, about that night in November when you were driving drunk and hit that mailbox and drove away, about the pharmacy incident you never reported. They'll find all of it very interesting." My finger hovered over the call button. How could he possibly know about those things? Things I'd never told anyone. Things I'd buried so deep, I barely thought about them anymore. "What do you want from me?" I finally managed to ask, my voice barely steady. The man took a step forward, into the fuller light of my flashlight, and I could see him better now. He wasn't just thin, he was gaunt, like he hadn't eaten properly in weeks. His clothes were wrinkled and dirty, and there was a manic energy behind his eyes despite the flat expression. "I don't want anything from you, Marcus. I just want you to understand. I've devoted 3 years of my life to understanding you. 3 years of watching, learning, documenting. Do you have any idea what that kind of dedication means? What it costs?" He gestured around at the walls covered in my images. "I know you better than you know yourself. I know that you bite your lower lip when you're nervous. I know that you always lock your car door twice, even though you heard it lock the first time. I know that you call your sister every Sunday at 9 p.m., but you haven't told her about losing your scholarship. I know that you sleep on your left side and that you have nightmares about drowning." Every word he spoke was true, and that terrified me more than anything else. This wasn't some random stalker who'd casually followed me a few times. This was someone who'd made studying me his life's work. "My name is David Forrester," he continued, "and you ruined my life 6 years ago. You don't remember me, do you?" I searched my memory desperately, but the name meant nothing to me. "I don't know you," I said. "I've never met you before in my life." David's face twitched, the first real emotion I'd seen from him. "Exactly. That's exactly the problem. You destroyed everything I had, and you don't even remember." October 14th, 2019. The parking lot of Cascade Community College. You were late for class and rushing, and you backed your car into mine. You left a note with a fake phone number and drove away. Insurance wouldn't cover it because of the hit and run. I couldn't afford the repairs. I lost my job because I couldn't get to work. My wife left me, Everything fell apart from that one moment, and you don't even remember. My mind raced back to 2019, trying to remember. There had been a minor accident in a college parking lot. Something so small I'd barely thought about it since. Nothing seemed damaged, and I was broke and terrified of my insurance rates going up. I had left a note, but in a panic, I'd written a fake number. A stupid, selfish decision made when I was 18 and desperate. And I had honestly forgotten about it until this moment. I'm sorry, I said, though the words felt hollow, useless against the weight of what was happening. Sorry. David's voice rose for the first time, sharp and trembling with rage. Do you think sorry fixes 3 years of obsession? Do you think sorry gives me back my life? He stepped closer, and I instinctively moved back into the corridor. After everything fell apart, I became fixated on finding you, he said. It took me 8 months, but I eventually tracked you down through the college security footage. Once I had your name, I had everything. I learned everything about you, Marcus. Every secret, every mistake, every moment of your life. And the more I learned, the more I realized. You're just like me. You're broken. You're scared. You're drowning in choices you can't take back. I kept backing away, but he matched my pace with slow, deliberate steps. I'm not going to hurt you, he said, reading the fear in my movements. I just needed you to see this. I needed you to understand what you did to me, even if you don't remember. I needed you to know that you're not invisible, that your actions have consequences, that someone sees you. Behind him, still inside the unit, I suddenly noticed something I hadn't before. A sleeping bag in the corner. Empty food containers. A small portable heater. Have you been living in here? I asked. David nodded slowly. For 3 months, he said. I rented this unit specifically because it's on your patrol route. I wanted to be close to you, to watch you work, to see how you move through the world, completely unaware that someone is always watching. What about Rebecca? I asked, my voice barely steady. Who was that woman? Was she even real? For the first time, David smiled. A genuine smile. One that somehow made him look even more unsettling. Rebecca Chen is real, he said calmly. She's a lawyer. She did rent a unit here today. Unit 412, not 237. He took a slow step closer. I paid someone to impersonate her, using the photos from her rental file, the same file I accessed from the office computer last week. When you left it unlocked during your break, my stomach twisted. The woman you met tonight, he continued, was an actress. I hired her from Craigslist. She played her part perfectly, didn't she? He tilted his head, eyes gleaming. Got you exactly where I needed you to be. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't obsession anymore. It was calculated, personal. I could have just approached you randomly, David said, his tone almost casual. But where's the impact in that? I wanted you to feel it. The violation, the fear of realizing someone knows everything about you. I wanted you to experience even a fraction of what I felt when my entire world collapsed because of your carelessness. My fingers trembled as I finally got through to 911. The operator's voice came through clear. 911, what's your emergency? But before I could answer, David lunged forward. He snatched the phone from my hand with startling speed. He didn't hang up. He just held it away, his voice low, calm, almost kind. Tell them what you did to me, Marcus. Tell them about the hit and run. Tell them about all the little secrets I know. He paused, eyes locked on mine, a cruel stillness in his expression. Or, he whispered, you can listen to what I have to say, then I'll leave. I'll disappear. You'll never see me again. He gestured around the dimly lit room. All of this will be gone by morning. I'll take everything and vanish like I was never here. Through the phone, I could still hear the operator's voice. Distant, anxious. Sir, are you in danger? Can you speak? My throat went dry. My heart hammered in my chest. I had to make a choice. What do you want me to do? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The 911 operator was still talking, but her voice sounded distant, tinny, through the phone speaker. David walked back into Unit 237, still holding my phone, and gestured for me to follow. Every instinct told me not to, but I felt paralyzed by the situation. This man had spent 3 years learning everything about me, had documented my entire life, and held knowledge of mistakes I buried deep. I stepped into the unit, and David closed the rolling door, most of the way, leaving just enough gap for light to spill in. The walls of photographs seemed to close in around me, hundreds of versions of myself, staring back from every angle. I want you to read this, David said, picking up one of the notebooks from the table and handing it to me. Read it out loud so the 911 operator can hear. So there's a witness to what I'm about to tell you. My hands trembled as I opened the notebook. The first page was dated 3 years ago, October 15th, 2019, one day after the parking lot incident. The entry read, Day 1, lost my job today because my car won't start. The repair shop says $2,400 minimum for the damage to the frame and engine mount. Insurance company denied the claim because the person who hit me fled the scene. Sarah says she's tired of my problems. I tried to explain it wasn't my fault, but she doesn't want to hear it. I feel like I'm underwater and I can't reach the surface. I keep thinking about the person who did this, driving away without a care in the world. They have no idea what they've done. I looked up at David, feeling genuine remorse flooding through me. I'm so sorry, I said softly. I was 18 and stupid and scared. If I could go back. Keep reading, David interrupted, his voice firm, but not angry anymore. I continued reading through the notebook, entry after entry, chronicling David's slow, heartbreaking spiral. The loss of his job led to missed rent payments. His wife leaving led to depression and isolation. Unable to find work, without reliable transportation, and sinking deeper into debt, he became fixated on finding the person responsible. What started as a desire for justice slowly twisted into obsession. The entries became more detailed, more frantic, more manic. Pages filled with plans to track me down, strategies for gathering information, notes about hacking my social media, finding my addresses, learning my routines. November 2021, one entry read, "Found him. His name is Marcus Wright. Lives in Portland. Works as a security guard. He looks so normal, so unbothered. How can someone destroy a life and just continue existing like nothing happened?" As I read, I noticed the 911 operator had gone silent, likely recording everything. David took the phone and spoke directly into it. "My name is David Forrester," he said. "I've been stalking Marcus Wright for 3 years. I've broken numerous laws, illegal surveillance, identity theft, hacking, trespassing. I'm confessing to all of it. Right now, I've documented everything in this storage unit." He paused, then continued, "But I need Marcus to understand something before you send officers here." He turned to me. "Marcus, look at me." I looked up from the notebook, tears streaming down my face. I couldn't stop crying, not from fear anymore, but from the crushing weight of realizing how one careless moment had sent someone's entire life into a death spiral. "I don't want revenge," David said softly. "I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted you to see, to understand, to know that our choices matter, even the small ones we forget about, especially those ones." The sound of sirens cut through the heavy silence. David calmly handed me my phone back. "They're here," he said simply. "I'm going to walk out there and surrender." He looked tired, like a man who'd been carrying a mountain for years. "I've prepared a full confession," he continued. "Locations of all my equipment, accounts I used for surveillance. Everything. I'm done running." I swallowed hard. "Why?" I asked, wiping my face. "Why confess? Why not just disappear like you said?" David gave me a faint, broken smile. "Because I'm tired, Marcus. This obsession has consumed me just as much as that accident did 3 years ago. I need it to end." He stepped closer, his eyes hollow but steady. "And I need you to live with this knowledge for the rest of your life. That someone out there watched you, knew you, and that you'll never be able to look at strangers the same way again." He paused. "You'll always wonder who's watching. That's my gift to you." A cold silence. My breath caught. My heart pounded. Because I knew he was right. Then, boom! The corridor burst open with the glare of flashlights and shouts. Police officers stormed in, weapons drawn. "Get on the ground!" David raised his hands immediately and dropped to his knees. "David Forrester, I'm surrendering peacefully. he said clearly. Everything you need is in Unit 237. They moved fast. Handcuffs clicked, evidence bags filled, flashbulbs flickered. One officer guided me out while others swarmed the room. A female detective stepped forward, badge glinting in the harsh light. Detective Morrison. She spoke gently, but her tone carried authority. Mr. Wright, what you've experienced is one of the most extreme stalking cases I've seen in 15 years on the force. I just stood there, numb. We're going to need you to document everything you can remember about tonight, she said, and we'll likely need follow-up interviews. The next few weeks were a blur of police interviews, lawyers, and psychologist appointments that the department required me to attend. David Forrester was charged with multiple felonies: stalking, identity theft, computer fraud, illegal surveillance, and several others. His confession was ironclad, and the evidence in Unit 237 was overwhelming. The case made local news for a few days. 3-year stalking case ends in bizarre confession. But thankfully, the media didn't dig too deeply into my personal life. During one of the interviews, Detective Morrison told me something that stuck with me. Mr. Forrester has been undergoing psychological evaluation, she said. The psychiatrist's preliminary assessment suggests he was experiencing a severe obsessive-compulsive disorder that fixated on you as the source of his trauma. The hit-and-run incident was the trigger, but his mental health issues were pre-existing. Without that incident, something else likely would have triggered a similar response. It was meant to make me feel less guilty, I think, but it didn't really help. I couldn't stop thinking about what David had said, that one thoughtless choice had contributed to destroying someone's life. Yes, he'd made his own choices after that, and his response was criminal and extreme, but I couldn't escape the fact that I'd set events in motion. By being careless and cowardly, I tried to return to work, but I couldn't do it. Walking those same corridors, passing Unit 237, now empty and sealed with police tape, I felt like I was suffocating. Every shadow seemed to hide another watcher. Every tenant who came by late felt like a potential threat. The solitude I'd once enjoyed now felt oppressive and dangerous. I gave my notice after 2 weeks back. About a month after David's arrest, I received a letter forwarded through the police department. It was from David, written from the county jail where he was being held pending trial. Detective Morrison called to tell me about it before it arrived, asking if I wanted to read it, or if I'd prefer they keep it as evidence without me seeing it. I told her I needed to read it. The letter was 3 pages long, handwritten in surprisingly neat script. It started with another apology, more detailed and thoughtful than his words in the storage unit. He explained that he'd been diagnosed with severe OCD and depression, conditions that had gone untreated for years before the parking lot incident. He described how the accident became the focal point for all his anxiety and fear, how tracking me down became a compulsion he couldn't resist, how documentation and surveillance gave him a sense of control, when everything else felt chaotic. But the part of the letter that haunted me was near the end. Asterisk Marcus. I want you to know that in studying you so intensely, I came to understand that you're not a villain. You're just a person who made a mistake, like we all do. The tragedy is that mistakes have consequences we can never fully predict or control. You couldn't have known that leaving a fake number would trigger a chain of events leading to this moment. Just like I couldn't have known that my response to that moment would consume 3 years of my life and destroy any chance I had at recovery. We're both victims of chaos and consequence. I hope you can forgive yourself because I'm working on forgiving both of us. Asterisk. The letter ended with him asking me not to respond, saying he needed to focus on his treatment and accepting responsibility for his actions. He signed it simply, David. I've been seeing a therapist twice a week since the incident. Dr. Patterson. She specializes in trauma and anxiety, and she's been helping me work through the mess inside my head. It's not just fear, though I definitely have that. It's guilt, shame, violation, anger, confusion, and this strange, heavy sense of loss, even though I never actually knew David before he entered my life. The hardest part is the hypervigilance. I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. When I walk down the street, I scan faces, searching for anyone who seems too interested. I check my car for tracking devices. I've changed all my passwords multiple times. I installed security cameras in my apartment, and I look over my shoulder. Constantly, Dr. Patterson says it's normal, that my brain is trying to protect me, to stay alert to potential threats. She says that over time, with work, the intensity will fade. I found a new job, a bank, daytime hours, lots of people, public visibility, no more night shifts, no more isolation. I also did something she suggested. I tracked down the real Rebecca Chen and told her everything. I apologized for someone using her identity. She was shaken, understandably, but grateful that I'd told her. We got coffee. She told me about being stalked by an ex-boyfriend years ago. It helped, talking to someone who understood what it feels like to have your privacy ripped away. And finally, I told my sister everything. The parking lot, David, all of it. First, she was angry that I'd kept it buried for so long. But then she just hugged me and whispered, "You're not defined by your worst moment, Marcus. None of us are." That helped more than I can ever explain. David's trial happened 6 months after his arrest. I had to testify, which meant facing him in court. I was terrified, but Detective Morrison and the prosecutor prepared me thoroughly for what to expect. When I walked into the courtroom, I saw David sitting at the defense table. I barely recognized him. He'd gained weight in jail, looked healthier somehow. His eyes had a clarity they hadn't had in the storage unit. When it was time for my testimony, I told the court everything that had happened. David's defense attorney tried to paint him as someone who'd had a mental health crisis, which wasn't entirely wrong. But the prosecution emphasized the calculated nature of his actions. The planning, the hiring of an actress, the 3 years of surveillance. When the defense called David to testify in his own behalf, he gave a statement that seemed to surprise everyone. He admitted to everything, expressed genuine remorse, and then said something I'll never forget. Asterisk, I'm guilty of every charge against me. I broke the law repeatedly, violated Mr. Wright's privacy in the most extreme way imaginable, and caused him ongoing trauma. But I want the court to understand, this case is about more than just stalking. It's about how our society fails people in crisis, how mental health issues go untreated, how one moment can spiral into years of suffering for multiple people. I'm not asking for leniency. I'm asking for the court to see that this tragedy had many causes, and that we all have a responsibility to be more careful with each other. Asterisk. The judge sentenced David to 4 years in prison, with mandatory psychiatric treatment, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. It was less than the maximum, but more than the minimum. As they led him out of the courtroom, David looked at me one last time. He didn't smile. He didn't nod. He didn't acknowledge me in any dramatic way. He just looked at me, and I looked back. And in that moment, there was understanding between us. We were both changed by what had happened. Neither of us would ever be the same. It's been 3 years since that night at Riverside Storage, and I'm still processing it all. I'm 27 now, working as a loan officer at a credit union, living in a small apartment in a busy neighborhood. I can hear my neighbors. I can see people walking by my windows. I like the visibility now. The reminder that I'm part of a community, rather than isolated, rather than vulnerable. I've gotten better at managing the hypervigilance, though it never completely goes away. I still check my locks twice. I still scan crowds for familiar faces. But Dr. Patterson was right. The intensity has decreased. Most days I can live normally, without that constant sense of being watched. I think about David sometimes, wondering how he's doing in prison, whether the treatment is helping, whether he's found any peace. I think about the parking lot incident and wonder how different both our lives would be if I just left a real phone number, or if I'd stayed and faced the consequences of the minor damage I'd caused. It's a useless thought exercise, but I can't help it. The biggest change, though, is how I move through the world now. I'm more careful, more thoughtful, more aware that every interaction, every choice, every moment of carelessness or kindness ripples outward in ways we can never fully predict. I volunteer at a crisis helpline twice a month, taking calls from people in mental health emergencies. It's my way of trying to break the cycle, to be there for someone the way no one was there for David when he needed help. Last month, I got a letter from David's lawyer. He's up for parole review next year. Part of his case will involve my statement about whether I feel he's still a threat. I don't know what I'll say yet. Part of me is still angry, still violated by what he did. But another part of me understands that he was a person in crisis who made terrible choices. just like I was a careless teenager who made a terrible choice that started it all. I've learned that life isn't simple. There are no pure villains, no pure heroes, just people making decisions with imperfect information and dealing with consequences they never saw coming. That night in the storage facility changed me forever. But maybe not in all bad ways. I'm more empathetic now, more careful with others, more aware of the invisible struggles people carry. And maybe that's what David wanted all along. Not revenge, but for me to see, to understand, to become someone who thinks before acting. If you're reading this, or listening to this story, I guess I want you to take something away from it too. Be kind. Be careful. Pay attention to the small moments, because they matter more than you think. That careless decision I made at 18 created a nightmare that affected multiple lives for years. Don't let your small moments of carelessness become someone else's tragedy. And if you're struggling, if you're spiraling, if you feel like one bad moment has defined your entire existence, please reach out. Get help. Don't let obsession consume you the way it consumed David. There's always another path forward, even when you can't see it. I still work on forgiving myself. Some days are easier than others, but I'm trying, and I think that's all any of us can do.